Today's devotion comes to us from 1 Kings chapter 18, verses 19 through 39. It starts with Elijah, the prophet of God. He is calling out King Ahab, who is leading the people of Israel away from God to worship the false gods Baal and Asherah. So let me start with verse 19. Now summon the people from all over Israel to meet me on Mount Carmel, and bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table. So Jezebel, in case you don't know, is Ahab's wife. We've probably heard a lot about her. Verse 20. So Ahab sent word throughout all Israel and assembled the prophets on Mount Carmel. Elijah went before the people and said, "How long will you waver between two opinions?" Elijah is asking the people, you know that God is your God. You know what God has done. Your ancestors have testified and told stories of the goodness of God. You have seen the God of heaven and what he does for the people of Israel. How long are you going to play this game where you claim that you follow God, but at the same time you are worshiping and following the idols of Baal and of Asherah? He goes on to say at the end of verse 21, if the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him. Elijah is telling the people, you must choose. There is no middle ground where you can follow two different gods. You must serve God, the Father of Israel, the God of heaven, the one who has done and delivered you and saved you. Or you can choose to follow the gods of the king, because it brings you favor or it brings you comfort in this land. It's the same choice that we must make today, where we must choose, are we going to follow and obey God, or are we going to choose the things of this world that are popular and will bring us attention, will bring us comfort, will bring us friendships, whatever it may be. It may bring us success, or it may bring us popularity. We can choose to follow those things, or we can choose to follow God, even though at times it may be extremely uncomfortable and go against everything that the culture says is okay. Verse 22, then Elijah said to them, I am the only one of the Lord's prophets left, but Baal has 450 prophets. Get 2 bulls for us. Let Baal's prophets choose one for themselves, and let them cut it into pieces and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. Then you call on the name of your God, small g, and I will call on the name of the Lord, the God who answers by fire, for he is God, the God, capital G. Then all the people said, what you say is good. So they said, sure, let's test it out. Let's see if the God of heaven responds, or if the gods of Baal and Asherah respond, and what happens. The people are good with this challenge that Elijah has thrown down. Elijah said to the prophets of Baal in verse 25, choose one of the bulls and prepare it first. Since there are so many of you, call on the name of your God, but do not light the fire. So they took the bull given them and prepared it. Then they called on the name of Baal from morning until noon. Baal, answer us, they shouted. But there was no response. No one answered. And they danced around the altar they had made. So these guys are looking pretty foolish right now, because they have spent the greater part of the morning praying and begging this so-called God to answer their prayer and set their sacrifice on fire, and yet there is no response whatsoever, and they're doing ceremonial dances and doing all these kinds of things, trying to conjure up whatever, but it's to no avail. At noon, Elijah began to taunt them. Shout louder, he said. Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or busy, or traveling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened. So they shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until their blood flowed. This is getting weird. Midday passed, and they continued their frantic prophesying until the time for the evening sacrifice. But there was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. I wonder why these guys are frantic. Possibly because they spent the entire day looking foolish, praying to a God that doesn't exist. Verse 30, then Elijah said to all the people, come here to me. They came to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down. Elijah took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes descended from Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, your name shall be Israel. With the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he dug a trench around it large enough to hold 2 seahs of seed. He arranged the wood, cut the bull into pieces, and laid it on the wood. Then he said to them, fill 4 large jars with water and pour it on the offering and on the wood. We all know that if you pour water on wood and then try to set it on fire, you're probably not going to have a lot of success. But this is the amount of faith that Elijah is showing in God. He says God is not going to be stopped by a little bit of water poured on top of this. In fact, God's not going to be bothered by the fact that I poured it multiple times. So he goes on to say, do it again. He said, and they did it again. Do it a 3rd time, he ordered, and they did it the 3rd time. And the water ran down around the altar and even filled the trench. So this thing was soaked with water. At the time of sacrifice, now remember, the prophets of Baal have been spending their entire day praying, begging, asking this so-called God to do something for them. But then Elijah steps up. At the time of sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and he prayed, Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God. So he's saying, God, come and prove yourself to these people. Let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and have done all these things at your command. God, I am being obedient to you. I have faith in you. I believe who you are. Please show yourself to be everything that I know you are to these people. That's what he's saying here. And answer me, Lord. Answer me so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again. God, answer me here so that it can be a testimony and give me the authority to tell these people that they need to turn back to you. We ask God to use us in mighty ways. We, through our faith, are used by God to do things that will draw the attention of man back towards God. Verse 38, then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil. And it also licked up the water in the trench. There was nothing left. God Almighty did it all. When all the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, the Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God. The mighty hand of God moved. Elijah proved that God was almighty, that these so-called gods, Baal and Asherah, have no authority, that they cannot intervene, that they will not answer you, that they are not there for you, but that the God of heaven is listening closely to you. He hears you. He wants to be honored in your presence. He wants to be the authority. He wants to be the one who gets the attention and the glory, and he will do what you ask when it is for his glory. If we come with the right attitude, so we must come in faith, asking God to do mighty things so that we can proclaim who he is and so that people will be drawn back to him. The entire purpose of all of this is to draw people to Jesus. You guys have an incredible and blessed day.